the top 25 released by D2Football.com heading into the 2025 season. Obviously, a big deal, fellas. We kick this season off. Again, D2Football.com, great friends over there. They do a wonderful job of covering D2 football. Definitely tune in for all of the news and recent happenings. And right away, Ferris State on top. The Bulldogs have won 3 of the last 4 national championships. They're on a run that is almost unparalleled at this level of football. They're slated to go back and do it again. Harding, Central Oklahoma come in the 2 and 3 spots. Rounding out the top 5, Minnesota State, Kutztown, some NSIC, PSAC flair. And then from there, it's kind of anyone's game. Grand Valley at 6 is maybe, Grand Valley might be one of the only fan bases in the country to say they're underrated at the 6th spot. CSU Pueblo, Western Colorado, some RMAC flavor at the 7 and 8 pieces respectively. You got Slippery Rock, Pittsburg State, West Florida, Angelo State, Ouachita Baptist, a great splattering from across the country. And then to go on the list really quickly for those listening, Lenore Ryan, Indianapolis, Augustana, Valdosta State, California, PA, Bemidji State, Fort Hays, Virginia Union, Charleston, West Alabama, Central Missouri, and Ashland. That's a mouthful, but fellas, those are the full rankings. Anything jump off right away as a surprise or a shock factor, or is this kind of what we expected?
Yeah, I mean, Ferris State at the top of the list, returning national champions. That's going to be a familiar sight right there at the top.
Sure.
One of my teams that I want to look out for right now is West Florida. They were a young team last year, and they battled injuries. They kind of had an unfavorable schedule, too. They played 4 top 25 teams, and 2 of them were in the top 3 at one point last season, and they lost to West Alabama in double OT. And then after that game, they go on the road to Grand Valley State. It's a tough schedule, but they're returning a lot of guys. They got TJ Lane, Marcus Stokes, Corey Scott, their leading running back, quarterback, wide receiver. I think they got a very favorable schedule this year. If they beat Lenore Rye week 1, I think they can go 6-0 going into West Alabama week 7.
Okay.
That good momentum carrying them in. I think that's a team to watch out for this year.
I like that pick a lot. We had Coach Nobles on the show pretty recently. Absolutely love what he's done with the program down there. He's been a part of the staff at Clemson with Dabo Sweeney, so obviously has been around some great influential coaches. Stokes under center is a dude. He's an absolute dude. I don't think we've been fully unleashed to the potential of what he has, especially under a guy like Nobles, who is a very great quarterback himself at the college level. So look for him to tap into that talent this year. And I'm going to kind of stay in the Gulf South in terms of teams that maybe we think are, it sounds crazy to say underrated when you're the top 25 teams in the country, but if you're out of West Alabama right now, I think you can absolutely make that case. That, to me, is a team that is kind of just stacking the chips on their shoulder as they come. And for me, Coach Cochran comes in to this building, this facility, and obviously has a pedigree and an aura, if you will, around this guy who has been with some of the best staffs in the country at Alabama and Georgia, respectively, with Saban and Smart and these incredible coaches. There might not be a true precedence, fellas, for what this guy brings to the head coaching position. A lot of question marks about the product they'll put on the field. What you do need to know about this team is they're all in for this guy. They absolutely, from what I can tell, I'm talking to these guys, they'll die for this dude. They're going to go out there and put it all on their field for this guy. You pair a strong leader with a squad that returns 2 of the top offensive weapons in the conference in Arsenault, and then at the tight end spot, Caleb Bass. That's a duo I cannot wait to see in person down at the Week 0 Labor Day Classic. I'll get down there soon here in Birmingham, Alabama. And for me, you kind of said it earlier on, Tim, there's no easy games on this schedule for any of these teams on this list. But with that being said, there's an asterisk. I say Week 0, Week 1 could be tune-up games. Fort Valley, I believe, Chowan could be tune-up games and allow this squad to really get some momentum, find their rhythm, start to develop this identity of theirs under Cochran before getting into those tough Gulf South games against your West Floridas, your Delta States, Valdosta down the line. There's going to be some juggernauts on that list. West Alabama, for me, is a team that is looking to prove a lot of people wrong and a lot of people right.
Yeah, Kobe, to be completely honest with you, and to be honest to the viewers, Kobe picked that West Alabama before I got the chance to log onto the thing to pick West Alabama, because I also agree with that. So I did decide to, look at another team as a potential team that I'm like, okay, let's see what they got. And it's the Vulcans of California, Pennsylvania. They enter this season ranked 18 in the country. Let's see what they got, right? You're in the PSAC, it's a tough conference. In week 1, they have Charleston, who obviously we know that Charleston pre-ranked 22, right? So that's like a good chance to let's see, how we can, a good test immediately, right? Some teams I feel like kind of want like a good win week 1, and they don't pick a team that's necessarily like a challenge, versus other teams are like, okay, let's get like a team that we can like see where I'm at.
Yep.
Good week 1. It's an underrated week 1 game being a Thursday night. And then Charleston could start off 3-0 as they have Westchester and Lock Haven after that, going into a big matchup at Slippery Rock, right? Night game, PSAC, right? I think that they could be a team that could surprise some people, right? Um, let's see exactly what they have, is because as far as veterans and stuff, you got guys like or Khalil Taylor and Keith Charney. So, why not Cal U, right? Like what
I like that.
in the PSAC, I feel like it's always wide open. It's right. So as far as a team that like could make a chance and could go do something with it, I could see them being that team.
I like that pick. Charleston reeling off
Sort
the
of like
loss
how
of Siobhan Wright
like
out of
how
that
Bemidji was
backfield,
last
right?
year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Sort of like how Bemidji was last year, where you remember Bemidji was kind of like pre-ranked on the edge of in the middle of the teens, right? And then they kind of, turned it on as of late at the end of the year and made a little bit of a run.
I do like that pick. And talking about Charleston a little bit, Siobhan Wright out of that backfield is trying to figure out what does our offense look like without the best back in the history of our program and one of the best in the history of Division II football the season he put together a year ago. And those couple games in the beginning, dude, those are no Westchester and Lock Haven. It's actually kind of a gauntlet to start things off after even Charleston getting into that Slippery Rock game. They take down the Rock last year, one of 2 meetings earlier on. Can they do it again in 2025? We shall see. But let's talk about the upper echelon of these rankings. You can't talk about the bottom without talking about the top. Drew, tell me about Ferris State. What makes them the true number 1 pick when it comes to the preseason top 25?
I think it's kind of funny, Kobe. Often teams talk about Alabama. They don't rebuild, they reload. They talk about Georgia now in the same category. At the Division II level, that's the definition of Ferris State, right? They don't rebuild, they just reload. It's the team that everybody's chasing. It's the team everybody has been chasing, to be completely honest with you. You win 3 out of the last 4 national championships. We've talked about this team, this program over, the last couple of years being on this this podcast. It's just like, type of like dynasty talk, right? And it's not one of those things to where it's always like, oh, we rebuild through the portal, right? Like, look at exactly last year, right? Carson Gulker went down, and what happened? The next man up decides to just go undefeated. And
the next man up decides to be possibly the best, if not one of the best players in the country.
Exactly. And so it's just like this 50-5 over the last 4 years, right? There is no area that you look at that team and you're like, oh, maybe they struggle there, right? And if you do, it's like you're going out on a limb to try to make that.
You're reaching.
Exactly. And so, simply put, I think they're legit because they're well coached. And to be honest with you, I think that they know how to get the best out of not only their guys that are in the program, but guys that come in and want to be a part of something special.
Yep. 100% agree. Now, Tim, take me to the number 2 spot. Harding. Thankfully, these 2 teams do not share the same super region in 2025. Mm-hmm. Thank God SR3 has been split up. The MIAA, GAC, GLIAC, that phenomenon is no longer. They move over to Super Region 4 with their MIAA counterparts. So we won't see them hopefully early on in the playoffs. This could be a potential late round semifinal type matchup. Tell me about the Bisons.
Well, they're going to be doing the same thing they always do, and they're going to run the damn ball, man. Braden Jay and Andrew Miller, they're the best backfield in D2. Last year, they combined for over 2,000 rushing yards. There's no other team in all of college football that's doing something like what Harding is doing. I love this team. I love this culture. I love the way they play. And Braden Jay is getting preseason MVP votes because he adds an element of receiving out of that backfield. And last year, they threw it 14 more times than they did in 2023. So obviously they're having a whole change in culture. I think we might be able to get to 70 passing attempts this year for this team.
This is the reporting we need. Yes, dude.
Ouachita Baptist is always going to be a tough but I don't see anyone standing in the way of this team until late in the playoffs. Per usual, I mean, this team, it's pretty simple. They're just going to run it down your throat, and you just got to stop it. They're going to line up their men against your men, one-on-one. We're better, and you know what we're doing. We're going to run the damn ball.
Absolutely, yeah. Henderson State, another one out of the GAC that was notably missing from this top 25 ranking. But like you said, Washita there at 13 is a big hurdle they're going to have to get over. And this Harding team, man, Coach Simmons once said that the flex bone ain't so bad if you like winning. And I love that. And they absolutely live by that. But fellas, to round this out in terms of some of the top dogs, so to speak, in this top three, let's talk a little bit about this team. We're going to talk a lot about them tonight. Central Oklahoma. Man, you go down there in Edmond, the biggest thing I thought would hold back the Chos in the preseason poll was their new head coach. I use air quotes there for those not familiar. James Curley, he served as the offensive coordinator. He was a finalist for a Coordinator of the Year award last year. He takes over as the interim head coach. I believe that is still the tag attached. Not 100% sure of what's going on down there. Their former head coach arrested in April. That could flip a team. Especially in the day and age of the portal, you could have a team disband and go every which way after an event like that. Certainly has not seemed to be the case. Of course, you lose some big-time playmakers. I'm not going to sit here and act like Terrell Davis going to Oklahoma State is just a non-factor and it's a non-loss for this squad. There's others, too. He just comes to mind right away. The voters didn't seem to mind. This team is going to be scary. They recognize that. Jet Huff, the man on the graphic, he seems to be the name you have to know about down there for UCO. He set multiple records after transferring in prior to last season. We're talking about a guy who could be cementing what really should be and can be a legacy in Edmond, Oklahoma this year. Huff under center, had him on the program. Love that guy. This team led the MIAA in scoring last year at almost 45 points per game. And to me, that kind of says the whole story about UCO. They've got some other big-time pieces on both sides of the ball, but that is a squad that has rightfully deserved that number 3 spot in the MIAA now. Can you hold on to it, right? 4 top 25 teams out of the MIAA, the most of any conference in D2 football. This year, who wins D2's toughest conference? And Tim, I think you've got a squad that, let's just say this transitions pretty well.
Yeah, man, I think Central Oklahoma repeats this year. And I know what you were saying, they have some head coaching problems. And I think another one of their issues too, other than, losing some of their big players, you mentioned Terrell Davis, but they got a tough schedule this year. Week 2, they're going to Pittsburg State. Then week 5 and 6, it's Central Mizzou and Fort Hays State. But listen, Jet Huff is the man. He threw for over 3,500 yards last year, 34 touchdowns. This is a serious Harlan Hill candidate this season. And I always say, if you got the best quarterback in your conference, your team's always got a chance. And I think, they repeat this year, but they do got a tough road ahead of them for sure.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. And that's a team that, again, will be the topic of conversation. I think last year for UCO, I don't want to say they burst onto the team. This is not a program that has been down in the dumps, but they certainly pushed themselves into the national conversation. And for me, there is another team in this conference that has done so as of late. That is Fort Hays State. That is a team for me that I'm really excited about. And this is certainly the dog of the group of the 3 teams we're going to talk about right now in terms of the MIAA competition. Not a team that is on top of the preseason poll for the MIAA. That was actually split, by the way, between the coaches and the media who picked Pittsburg State and Central Oklahoma, respectively. This is a team that has forced their way into the national conversation. They've earned that right because of the way they've played inside of conference. Just had a running back, Shane Watts, sign with the New England Patriots. So shout out to Watts, which is an incredible achievement. But the Tigers, they get to prove themselves right away. They open up with number 12, Angelo State at home. And guess what, fellas? The all-time series record against Angelo? 1-0, baby. They beat them last year. It was 21-7. And they have I'm not a math guy, but I believe that's a 100% winning percentage against Angelo State in the history of the program. They've got 2 guys in the D2Football.com Elite 100. Josh Shaw, he's back to anchor the front 5 on the O-line. Then you look on the other side of the ball. The top returning tackler, linebacker, Josh Johnson. He's bringing some experience and leadership to a defensive group, guys, last year that led the conference in scoring defense. That is a stat inside of this conference with the offenses we've seen come out of here with the likes of Jet Huff and Zach Zabrowski and these names at quarterback that have been synonymous with winning and filling up the stat book. That's a very incredible accomplishment for this Fort Hays squad. I'm excited to see what they put on the field in 2025.
Okay. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think you guys are kind of sleeping on Pittsburg State.
Okay. No one's sleeping on the Gorillas here.
I mean, I'm just saying, both of you guys talking about Central Oklahoma, and rightfully so. And as far as Fort Hays, yeah, another team that I could see definitely making some noise. But I will say this: if Pittsburg State gets through the first 3 weeks and goes 3-0, they're the best team in the country.
Yeah.
Right? Like
No
their
question.
first 3 weeks is a gauntlet, right? A gauntlet. You're looking at number 1 Ferris, number 3 Central Oklahoma, and number 6 Grand Valley.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane.
Right? Like
and then
wow.
you go right
Yeah,
off of
Fort
that
Hays.
into Fort Hays, right? Or see who's,
Yes.
in the poll right now.
So we're about to find out a lot about them. And here's what I'm going to say. I just think that Pittsburg State, right? You talked about how Central Oklahoma had a really good year last year. You talk about how, Ferris State and Pittsburg State a year ago, how big of an impact that game was. But I just think that not necessarily that I guess they're saying being slept on, but I feel like they are up there as far as like teams across the country at the D2 level that are kind of getting into that, GV category where it's like you expect really good things from them every single year now, right?
Yeah, certainly.
Where I don't think necessarily it was the case, when we were first going into school a couple years ago. Like I don't think that was necessarily the case where everyone saw them as like a perennial powerhouse. Right?
I will tell you, Pittsburgh State. I will tell you, Pittsburgh State has been on the scene for a minute. They are.
No, I know that. I know that. But I'm saying, like, when everyone's
this stat
talking
should tell
about,
you all
like,
you need to know. Pittsburgh State is the all-time winningest program in D2 football history.
I know that. I'm just saying that I don't think they get necessarily the respect they deserve. Like, it was one of those things where it was like when they beat Ferris, it was like a big deal. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Where it's like in college football, Division I, if Ohio State beats Texas, it's like Ohio State's that good, right?
Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, like I think Pittsburgh State's just I just think they're a perennial powerhouse now, and like we said, great, rightfully so. If they're all-time winningest and stuff, but I just genuinely think that they're kind of being slept on. I mean, at 10.
Let's talk about some teams here that I think could definitely make the case of being slept on. That being the unranked teams that we believe deserve a look, at least when it comes to the national conversation and making some noise on the national stage. I'll start things off. Let's talk about Tiffin. The Dragons out of the GMAC, looking to be probably the best team out of the GMAC this year, and I say that because there's a lot of football to be played, but right now on paper, this team is the front runner for the Great Midwest Athletic Conference. Coach Ekins and company, they know they've got a special group down there in Ohio, and I can say down there because we're a lake away from Canada up here in Marquette, so it's like one of the only geographic areas that can say that. More preseason honors on both sides of the ball for this Dragons squad. You've got Ronald Blackman, Chris Walton, respectively. Blackman, the GMAC Player of the Year, he's back on your roster. That's enough said. Second team All-American, and then Walton on the other side of the ball, the defensive lineman of the year inside of conference play. He led all of Division II in sacks last season. He's an absolute monster. And we get to see, fellas, you talk about a tough schedule. We get to see exactly what this Tiffin team is made of. Week 2, they head up to road to Big Rapids. That, of course, the home of Ferris State, September 13th. And we're going to see exactly what this Tiffin squad is made of. How do they stack up against the national best in the standard inside of Ferris State and Top Taggart Field up there? A lot of teams wish they had that opportunity. Tiffin has it. You have a chance to go prove yourself. Not saying you got to go blow them out in their home field, but go out there and put a great product in the field and make these voters think twice about leaving you outside the top 25.
Yeah, for sure. Not a lot of teams get that opportunity, like you said, Kobe. So once you get it, you got to make the most out of it.
Yep.
One team that I really like this year, that's unranked. I might get some flack for this for some of my boys back home here. But I'm going to move it back to my old conference, the NE10, and that's the Bentley Falcons. I wish it was Southern Connecticut State, but I'm going to have to go with the Falcons here. And that's because that New Haven made that big move up to Division I, and they were owning the conference for many years. You're always going to see an NE10 team sneak into the top 25 late in the season, whoever's leading that conference. Not saying that this is a national champion contender or anything, but there's always going to be a team or two in the playoffs. and Bentley New Haven was always Bentley's Achilles heel for years, and they just could not get past them. New Haven's gone. The conference is wide open, and I think it's Bentley's for the taking. I think you can see St. Anselm. They've been building that program up for a couple of years. I think they can make some noise, and Assumption's always a solid team there. My alma mater, Southern's got a new head coach. I think they're a year or two away from making some noise in that conference, but I think it's going to be Bentley's year. I just think that's just such a solidified program, and they're going to be in the top 20, I would say, by the end of the year.
I like that pick a lot, and also for another reason that we haven't really talked about too much on the show, but I think we actually kind of semi-broke the news about this when we had Mike Racy, the commissioner of the MIAA, back on the show a while back. The expansion of the D2 playoff from 28 to 32 teams and the inclusion of an auto bid into the national playoffs is something that, for a team like Bentley, is incredibly important. You look at a conference like the NE10, who the last couple of years who have competed for those earned access spots where, in short, if you were inside the top 10, you got leapfrogged into the playoff conversation. That is abolished. It's out the window. Now, Division II has gone to really the auto bid style of the playoffs, where if you win your conference, you are guaranteed a spot in the national field in the playoffs. And so for the NE10 and a conference like that, you talk about Bentley and them just kind of chipping away, getting themselves into that position where they're a top 25, top 20 team in the national conversation. You can now springboard yourself into a playoff run. And then, of course, you get into the playoffs, everything else is off the table, and you see how things roll. So for me, I really like that pick because it does feel like the door is opening for them in more ways than one.
100%. That automatic bid is huge, especially like you said, from a team from the NE10. And then once you get into the playoffs, you never know what happens, man. It's March Madness.
Or March Madness.
December Madness.
In like November, yeah.
December Madness.
Hey, I had coaches in high school, man, that used to just always say, like, if you're playing football and it's snowing, like, you're damn good, right? Like, that's just what it is. And so the goal for Bentley and any of these squads is to play until it's really cold at practice.
Yep, exactly. And it gets cold up there in New England, simply. Man. Very cold.
Yeah. Close us off, Drew.
Yeah, first off, call me whatever. Call me Jared Goff. Honestly, I'm on the side of, like, if it's cold at practice, like snowing and stuff, you don't get anything done because everyone's just complaining. This
is coming from the Michigan Tech Husky, dude.
Yeah, and I hated it snowed one time, and I hated it. It's like the last Monday of practice of my senior year, and I was like, this sucks. Like, man, anyway, I said, call me Jared Goff. I don't care, but like that, it sucks, right? Anyway, East Stroudsburg was my pick for a team that wasn't ranked, that I necessarily think that they have an opportunity to, like, be a little salty that they're not ranked, to be completely honest with you, right? They had a solid year this past year. Led by, yes, they did lose a couple people to the portal. Yes, they did lose a couple people to the graduation, right? But we're talking about,
Who didn't, right?
Exactly, right? And Kobe, we talk about all the time at the college level, at the high school level, at the pro level. It doesn't matter. When you have a returning quarterback that happens to be one of the best players in your conference, you got a chance to make some noise. And I'm not saying that, like, hey, we're going to win the conference, or hey, we're going to go win the national championship. But as far as like what this question was asked, who could have been ranked, right? And who has like I think it's East Stroudsburg when you have Sean McTaggart, who I believe we just had on the show a couple weeks ago. Exactly. Like, I just think that you got a guy like him, gives them an instant credibility, right? Instant chance of being a contender for the playoffs. And a guy like Everett Dingle, who's anchoring the defense, like, they have players. They had a season this past year where they're very solid, right? Obviously, ended a little abruptly and very, not the way they wanted to, but that also allows for a guy to not have necessarily a chip, but now it's a boulder on his shoulder.